Good afternoon. My name is Tamar Oliver Lavender Robinson, and this is the next episode of Musings with Mar. You've clicked on this episode because you've clearly seen that I'm talking about the UK cost of living, but I'm going to give it to you straight, and I'm going to talk to you in a way which I'm pretty sure the average politician just isn't willing to speak to you about in this way. I'll start by talking about things like the circular economy and how money flows to, through, and around each other. The physical toll on our streets, for instance, the squeeze that councils are facing when it comes to how budgets are spent, how we make better use of our resources, and then we'll also talk about things like how supermarkets profit maximize and the stigma that's attached towards helping everybody to move forwards. So I'm your host, Tamar Oliver Lavender Robinson. This is a podcast series produced by the Business Production Company, of which I am the owner. I'm looking to use these conversations as a method for me to both get my thoughts out, tell some stories, and enlighten a few people on the journey towards living a better, more grounded life, connected to each other, but also an informed life. Right. I'm watching the Liverpool versus Manchester United game. It's at Old Trafford, and Liverpool currently 2-0 down. So I'm recording this even, on the 3rd of May 2026. The time is 10 minutes past 4. I'm going to start by talking about how bad things are right now. The cost of living is out of control. Food prices are, in my view, a very, very large proportion of my finances. What I earn on a monthly basis, a lot of it goes towards food. And it's a reality for many people, not just me. It's spoken about often on the TV, and it's mentioned often that things like fuel prices, energy prices are affecting the cost of living, particularly because of the wars happening in the world. Now, that is one aspect, but when I hear people talk about energy prices, it seems very divorced from the reality of what we see every day, which is when you walk down your high street, when you visit your local doctors, the things that you see and experience every day are material. You can feel the potholes. Goodness, potholes. We know that that's a big thing. We can see empty buildings. We can walk around litter on the floor, and we can see that there is something missing. There's something massively wrong. You go on Facebook and you'll see people arguing and posting comments and making these observations about how there's too many cars, too many bad parking, particularly in towns and cities with certain numbers of population. And the issues don't seem to get resolved. It just seems to go round and round. So, the local squeeze that we're all experiencing. What happens when the communities we live in, the towns we have, are experiencing inflation, and as a team, as a community of people, we just simply don't know what to do? I think, and I believe, that it's in part due to an extraction of our resources, an extraction of our finances. It's an increasing amount of individualization where we sort of look out for ourselves, look out for our family, and I look out for our immediate close circle. And we don't understand how we are all intertwined, we're all connected, and we don't look out for one another apart from if it benefits us directly. Yeah? You may have heard about the circular economy before. Now, the circular flow of income, it might be described to you at times. This is simple. When you buy from a local bakery, that baker will in turn use the money that they've gotten from you and other customers to pay a local plumber. That local plumber, in turn, after he's finished his day's work, will go and they'll buy a pint at the pub. So that money bounces around. It goes from you to your baker, to your plumber, to your pub, and then that pub will then spend money on things in your local area as well. And it bounces around before maybe at some point leaving that community and going elsewhere. But guess what? 4 or 5 people have been paid off of that initial money you spent at the bakery. Now, that doesn't happen when you shop at a place like Greggs, because Greggs is a multinational. Multinational? Wrong, actually. It's a national. It's part of a large company which, when you spend the money locally, the money goes to the central pot. It goes to that large organization, and they get to decide what they do with the money. Greggs will have contractors around the UK, and they will have a network of vendors that they spend money with. It won't be your local plumber. It won't be your local hairdressers that they're investing in. It will be their approved contractors. Now, something else which is very obvious in today's world is a shift from high street, a shift from retail selling to online ordering, which has been steadily growing for the last 20 years. You know as well as I know, Amazon is huge. And I've done YouTube videos in the past talking about click and collect, talking about retail operations, and talking about the strategy of what Prime and Next Day Delivery has done to us as communities. A fulfillment center does bring jobs to a town and to an area. It definitely does. However, there is still leakage that will be experienced, because when you think about the local economy, when you're making profits, when Amazon's making profits, those profits do not stay in the town. They are extracted to shareholders. And the way that's done is because when there is an excess amount of money made in that calendar year and that company's made a profit, they will make some investments. They will reinvest it into themselves. They will, buy bigger trucks or upgrade their security. They will do these things. But all the money that's left over after all of that will go through dividends to their shareholders. Their shareholders could be anybody, anywhere. They could be singularly the owner, Jeff Bezos, who we know is basically a billionaire, trillionaire, or it could be individuals with high stakes in both the UK, Europe, and the rest of the world. They will be getting those profits. They will be getting the benefits of what that business based down your local road have produced. Because you have that leakage, because those shareholders are gaining money, there's nothing wrong with shareholders making money, but when they don't reinvest it back into the area which is carrying the can, then the money's being extracted. If they live in the south of France and they receive a dividend of £10,000 from Amazon's work that year, they then spend that £10,000 on a trip to Spain or on a trip to Dubai. So they're spending it outside of the UK, spending it outside of your local community, whereas it's your community that produced that profit. Right. That squeeze would be minimized if those same individuals, although employed by Amazon, yes, Amazon may offer 10,000 jobs through a fulfillment center, but if those 10,000 jobs were dispersed around smaller organizations, more networked organizations that are going to work with each other and work in your local area, then odds are that the profits that those smaller organizations are making are more likely to be spent in your local area. They're more likely to be spent on friends and family in your local area. They're more likely to be spent on contractors in the local area. That money will stay in the community instead of finding its way to Dubai. Now, for me, I've been dancing with the ideas of second economy and the second flow of income for a number of years, and I don't find it difficult to get my head around, but I do find it difficult to talk about. So if you've got any questions, please come to me. Please message me directly, because I'd love to talk about it in more detail and actually have an open conversation. Next, the physical toll that we see on our high streets, in our communities. I'm going to break it down into a few different segments. Council tax and HMOs. particularly within a community like Luton. Luton is a super dense town. It's a 10 out of 10 when it comes to density, much like a London borough. And the amount of people living within a small proximity, particularly around the town centre, is astronomical. I would say it's astronomical. HMOs have been on the rise for a number of years, and landlords favour them because they're able to let individual rooms and create a house of multiple occupancy, whereby what they're paying to the council, yes, they'll pay for a HMO license, which is like a one-off fee, and then the council tax for that building won't be head and shoulders above council tax you're paying towards other buildings. So you can gain 5, 6, 7 streams of rent from letting it to 5, 6 people through a HMO, but the amount that you're paying as council tax or through your HMO licensing fee isn't going up by every individual room that you're letting, so it's favourable. Now, what that does is, if in the central ward of a town like Luton, for example, the local council over a number of years have anticipated that on average there will be 10,000 people living in that area. However, if you now have a spate of HMOs that change these properties from traditionally being homes of 2 to 3 people or 3 to 4 people to homes that now have 5 to 6 people or 6 to 7 people, that town's ward's population is now going to be about 1.5 times bigger. So 10,000 people times 1.5 is actually around 15,000. So when you're budgeting for the number of collections for rubbish, the number of repairs to the roads that are going to happen in the central ward in that time period, you're budgeting based on the fact that there'll be 10,000 people living in that area. Now, if it turns out to be 15,000 people living in that area, that's 5,000 more people walking those streets every day. That's 5,000 more people getting the bus every day. That's 5,000 more people looking to maybe buy a car or travel to the park or go and buy things, or will be eating and drinking in locations and producing more waste, more rubbish. So that very small change from allowing a number of HMOs to exist in the area will have a very big impact on infrastructure. Some people can't understand it, but I'm trying to put it in as simple words as possible. More people means more drain on resources. And if the budgets aren't collaborated and coordinated correctly, there will be a net loss. When you keep adding people without adding the necessary upgrades to housing and to transport, to waste management, to healthcare, then there will be a very obvious problem. Something else that I've noticed when I was living in Luton permanently, and me and my family noticed this from many years ago, there is a very clear and obvious corporate cost-cutting exercise. This is where tradespeople, delivery drivers, people that work for DPD, Every, organizations like that, and I am calling them out because I have to say their name at the end of the day, they are maybe forcing or allowing their workers to park their commercial vans in residential areas. The likely way that the companies are benefiting from this is because during the pandemic, when many organizations didn't have the need for their fleets through till now, these companies began to save money by allowing their workers to take their commercial vehicles off site, or if they downsize the size of the building that they were leasing, and then for they get a smaller yard, so putting the burden on the employee to either be self-employed and have that van themselves, or simply to take that van with them, means that the commercial companies are able to save money and not having to house these vehicles. But this puts an extra burden and pressure on our local streets and our local communities, where quite clearly, you walk through any street in Dallow area and you will struggle to park because there'll be car, 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 van, van, van. And the average van is at what, 1.5 times bigger than a car. So I know, without a doubt, that there's a big impact on our local economy thanks to corporations and big organizations cost cutting and pushing their commercial vehicles onto their employees, or by switching them into being self-employed or contractors anyway. Then you're gonna have to make an idea here where when I did my work experience for DHL, I was just out of college, coming towards the end of my college time, and when I was working in the offices, their staff working in the HR team would go and they would teach at a local school, or they would go and they would do some work in the community. This is stuff that their company allowed them to do, and they were being paid by the company whilst they did it. That was in Milton Keynes, and I thought to myself, wow, what a great organization, because they recognize that to enrich their staff's lives, they need to give them the space and opportunity in their week to go and work in the local area and give back. Because at the end of the day, DHL is a huge company making profits, and if you can support your team to give back locally, there's going to be a gain to your locals. It's going to create an environment where people want to come and work for you, and they're going to have a steady flow of employees who are dedicated and passionate about doing the right thing. I don't see that very often. I don't know how many times Tesco will donate their staff man hours to the local community so they can go and do a litter pick, or so they can go and be a chaperone, or so they can put on an event for the young people. I just don't see it happening. It may not be being talked about, but I'm not hearing about it. So I had to bring it to everybody's attention. Now, in the last segment of this podcast, I really want to go into talking about, well, I mentioned Tesco once already, but supermarkets, they are not struggling at all. Whilst they employ countless numbers of people in our communities, the reality is they've been steadily reducing the number of people who they employ, switching them from being customer service, switching them from being those that work on checkouts, to automated self-service machines, to scan as you go shopping, and then hiring people purely for shelf replenishment. Now, fine, they're still employing people. People still have a role to play. And when it comes to click and collect and home deliveries, there are still jobs that are being created there. Let's not disagree. But the amount that they spend on people has drastically reduced years on years on years, while still maintaining strong profits, strong growth, and appeasing their shareholders. Now, we look around each other sometimes, we wonder where all the money is going, and the money is going into shareholders' pockets. The money is going into the rich people's pockets. The money is going into people's pockets who can afford to speculate with their money. But they're not speculating at this point. They're betting on a sure thing. When you're investing in a company like Tesco's, or you're investing in a company like Amazon, you're betting on a sure thing. And the game will have you think that, oh, why don't we all just do that? Why don't we all just put our money in these sure things? But that's how you get large organizations getting bigger and bigger and gouging small organizations. There becomes a lack of diversity. People aren't able to get into make their own businesses, and those companies get so big they become monopolies or duopolies. And it's one thing that I need to make clear is that monopolies, duopolies will always inevitably in the long term exploit the consumer, because their job is to maximize shareholder growth. If you become a shareholder and you start getting gains of 10%, 15% on what you invest in, you think, wow, this is amazing. I don't have to do anything. I leave it to this giant company to throw its weight around and exploit everybody, and I get rich off of it. That is the reality of the modern day supermarket in the UK. Profit maximization, squeezing their employees, squeezing their customers, squeezing the local council, and diverting again all of the profit they make into shareholders. So that's where your money's going. Your money's going to shareholders. And when you look at the supermarkets, when you look through the aisles, supermarkets are not struggling for food. There is not a shortage of food in supermarkets at all. The bread aisle is stacked. The bread that they throw away at the end of the day is just grotesque. There's always food spare in a supermarket. The reduced section, they don't even reduce it that much. The food gets reduced by like 10-15% maximum. And you'll see by the end of the day, when they know that food is going to be thrown out still, the food doesn't get reduced to free. So the supermarkets are having a laugh at our expenses, and it's time for people to understand that they have it easy, they have it good. I don't subscribe to this thing of going in and stealing from supermarkets. What I instead subscribe to is shopping locally, buying locally, and putting pressure on these supermarkets to act in the right way, to give back, to donate money, and not through these little tiny schemes you see where you vote on things and then they give a small amount of money and it gives a perception that they're giving back, because ultimately they're still making us choose between 3 or 4 groups. Why can't they all be funded? As they'll never ask that. Why can't they all be funded? No. Definitely not one per store. That doesn't make sense to me. Because of the way supermarkets are very individualized. They give you a club card. They start giving you personalized offers. They start giving you individual promotions. And even though you're all in there shopping together, how often do you ever have any common conversation, common interactions with people in the supermarket other than the casual kind of, oh, excuse me, pardon me? The point is we're all individuals shopping in a supermarket, but we're all buying the same stuff. So we're paying the maximum amount for things that we're all buying all at once. That doesn't make sense to me. And that's spurred partly because of the rise of individualism. We're all working on our own, we're all working in silos, we don't pool money, time, or resources anymore. So if I live in a block of flats, and I have 20 neighbours, and I'm going to go to the supermarket, I'm going to walk there, I'm going to walk back. It's going to cost me 25 minutes. Then I'm going to buy stuff. Then I'm going to come back and cook it. But we're a block of 20 people in this flat. So if all 20 of us are walking backwards and forwards, and all 20 of us are buying the same food, and all 20 of us are cooking the food, and then we're all eating the food, give me one good reason why we're not all cooking, eating, and shopping as a collective. There is no good reason. There is no good reason why we are not all shopping, cooking, and eating together. The only reason we're not is because of a stigma. It's because we are individualized. Because the way that things are set up right now is that we are individuals. Instead of buying, I don't know, 2 butternut squashes, creating a broth and sharing it around 20 people, a flat of 20 people, a block of 20 people, there's a potential that 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 of us could all buy butternut squash each, and then be left with too much butternut squash. Like, how much butternut squash can you really eat? You don't want to eat it 5 days a week. Nobody wants that. So it makes sense that we pull things together. We understand who has what, when they have what, and what they're going to make. There's a stigma attached towards food banks, soup kitchens, food kitchens, canteens. We all know in school, in college, going to the canteen, we're all getting a similar food. We knew what the menu was for the week. Nobody argued about it because we know what's coming. It's efficiency, it's community, it's sharing our resources. It doesn't make sense for 20 people to make 20 different meals every day of the week. We're not fostered towards creating a community because in this block of flats, we don't have a common room. We don't have a communal space where we can come together, understand who's making what and why. There's a church down the road, there's a community centre down the road, but within our specific block, it's not being fostered. The reality, though, is a canteen, a food kitchen, I'm not going to call it a soup kitchen, but a food kitchen, a canteen, benefits everybody. Because when you walk through those doors, yes, the price of the meal is, I don't know, £3.30, £4.50. It benefits everybody. We're all paying the same amount. It's not being means tested. So the person that's maybe poorer and doesn't have much spare money, they're not spending £10 on a meal. And the person that's rich and has loads of money, they're not spending £20, £25 on a meal. So when you share, when you share, everybody gets a better rap of it. Whereas the system right now is we probably are being exploited. Somebody who's rich will go to somewhere that is tailored to a more upscale, rich environment, and they're paying 2, 3, 4 times the odds for a meal that quite clearly shouldn't cost that much money. And conversely, a poor person is having to pay way more than if it was shared out between more people. So there's a massive social stigma around not being able to break bread with multiple people from multiple different walks of life in the same place. Pubs and restaurants have tried to fill that void, but as I'm kind of addressing in this musings here, is that when it is for profit, when it's for gain, when you're a pub that is a part of a chain, when that chain is part of 100 or so pubs and there's a central organization that's trying to profit maximize, inevitably, once again, that pub will be forced or pressured to exploit, profit maximize, and extract the maximum they can out of its people, even if those same people may or may not be able to heat their homes or travel for work or purchase healthcare. It's really, really sad stuff, but I did this podcast because I wanted to just reclaim a space and time, talk about how the local economy and the local environment is way more resilient than we think if we do things right. Yes, there is economic shocks. Yes, prices can rise because of energy and we can be put under pressure. But if you're already doing the best that you can to save money locally, if you're already looking at systems around us and digging deeper into how financially we can share, we don't have to always pay the maximum for everything. There's a highly recommended podcast I recommend you look into. It's called Strong Towns. It will change the way you look at your streets, your communities, how you process, how we move forwards together, and you don't have to feel alone when it comes to the cost of living. You can keep up with my personal musings and my updates on my Instagram. That's at Senor Luton. And if you're tired of seeing the environment neglected, from fly tipping to littering, check out the NGO I run. It's called Luton's Very Own, because we're actively lobbying the Luton Council to prioritise the beautification of our spaces, because a town that looks cared for is a town that thrives. Thank you for listening.